Welcome back to Millennial Focus with Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis, where we teach millennials how to live their lives. Sometimes this happens with radio stations, Bill, like you just suddenly change formats and it's a different show. And that's what happened to this Northern College football show for about 5 hours on our podcast feeds on Wednesday, but we're fixed now.
Has that ever happened to you where you were listening to a radio mid-switch and you weren't expecting it? Listening to a radio station?
I feel like it has. Yeah.
It happened to me one time too.
What happened?
It was like a alternative rock station in Philadelphia, and I was listening to it, and like I think it happened in the middle of the day. It just like I think it's switched to like a pop station, and I was like, why am I hearing Britney Spears on the station where I normally listen to Nirvana?
Yeah. So if you only watch us on YouTube, you have no idea what we're talking about, and that's great. If you do listen to us on podcasts, sorry for that blip. It's fine. Everything's fixed now. Thanks to everybody for bearing with us. What happened is we did have like a little bit of a change of a provider, and there was an RSS feed mishap, and something got in the wrong stream for a couple hours.
Yeah,
but we're fine, right? We're all good. We didn't actually change formats. I got a lot of thoughts about millennials, by the way, though.
Yeah, we can do. You want to do that instead of pick games? Let's pick games instead. We should pick games.
If that show wants to have me on, great, but we're not going to do it on this show. What we're going to do on this show is pick, I think we have 17 games we're picking. We have 16 Northern games overall this week involving our 28 Northern teams. Everybody's playing except Oregon and Washington. So we have 16 of our games. One we did on Wednesday. If you want to hear about Indiana, Ohio State, we did a whole show about that top 5 matchup. We gave our picks there. If you're thinking like, what are they doing? Ignoring the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes. We went all in. So then we're picking the other games today. We're picking 17, our 15 Northern games plus 1 G5 game plus 1 Cram at Southern game. And we're going to start with 4 games, Landis, that we think just deserve a little bit more time. And we're going to start first with Penn State at Minnesota.
No, you should start with our records.
We are going to start here with our records from last week and for the year. Are you a millennial, by the way? Are you a millennial?
I don't know. I think I'm Gen X, maybe.
No, I'm Gen X. You think you're right you're squeezing in the bottom of Gen X? Welcome, brother.
I don't know.
I didn't know. No,
Gen X is 1980, so I guess I'm millennial. I was born in 88.
Okay.
So,
okay. You millennials are just like correcting the Gen Xers all the time, just because our brains are getting feeble and we're forgetting things.
I'm just helping out our producer Mike, who made this nice fancy graphic with our records that were good last week.
I'm as Gen X as it gets. Like I am like right in the middle of Gen X. Like this is it. If like you need to do like a project in class, if you're Generation Z or whatever, and you're like, what's a Gen Xer look like? We both went 14-4 last week after I was like, I'm doing all these crazy upsets. And I hit on some of them, but then I also missed on some of them. But I actually I think we both had good weeks. We're both 14-4. I'm actually pretty happy with how we saw the sport a week ago.
Yeah, you took some swings. How'd you work out for your swing games?
Yeah, so my swing games, I actually feel like tremendous about it because I picked Arizona State to beat Kansas State as an upset. That was correct. I picked Kansas to beat BYU. That was correct. I picked Boston College as an 18.5 point underdog to beat SMU. They didn't beat them, but they gave SMU a game like the whole day, and they easily covered that. And then I picked Navy over Tulane, but that was a little bit with the heart, and that was way wrong. So I was wrong on we were both wrong on West Virginia Baylor, and then I was wrong on Boston College SMU, Navy Tulane, and San Jose State Boise State. I also picked San Jose State in upset. They hung around for a while, and then Boise won. You were wrong on BYU and Kansas State. You were wrong on Syracuse Cal. I also got that upset correct with Syracuse winning. And then you were wrong on West Virginia with me. So anyway, 14-4, we'll take it. Will we take it?
I'll take it. I needed it.
We were 12-9 and stuff a bunch of the previous week. So then I maintained my 9-game edge on the season. 191-53 for me, 182-62 for you. So now we'll get to picking. Starting with Penn State, Minnesota. And the reason I want to start with Penn State, Minnesota is because of the past. And PJ Fleck was asked about that this week and basically said that was 5 years ago, which is probably the right answer. But I'm wondering if there are some vibes here, because in 2019, the biggest win of PJ Fleck's tenure at Minnesota was a 31-26 win over number 4 Penn State in November in Minneapolis. And that is exactly what the Gophers are staring down right now. Now, and this is also, I also like it. This soothed me a little bit. We're all very there's a lot of consternation about Indiana's ranking, right? And that Indiana's 10-0 and whatever. In 2019, Minnesota was 8-0 and was 17th in the college football playoff rankings. They were 8-0 going into this game against Penn State. They were 17th. So it's like that was a Big Ten team. So maybe we are actually evolving in being able to give credit to teams who are taking care of business. That was Minnesota's first top 5 win at home since beating Michigan in 1977. When they did that in 2019, this would obviously be the first one since then. In that game, Minnesota intercepted Sean Clifford 3 times. And listen to these bangers, these NFL guys in this game. These 4 players in that game had more than 100 receiving yards. KJ Hamler and Pat Fryermuth for Penn State, and Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson for Minnesota. Just chucking it all over the place. Sean Clifford and Tanner Morgan in that game combined for 679 passing yards. I just want people those were the days, brother. How about that?
Yeah. It's great. I remember that game. Minnesota stormed the field, I believe, afterward.
Go for tingles. I'm getting go for tingles. That was on November 9th, 2019. PJ Fleck's quote on it. Well, it happened. You can take that it happened. When you talk about somebody trusting what you're doing and how you're doing it, you need time, consistency, and proof. The win in 2019, they were ranked 4th in the country, but that has nothing to do with the 2024 season. It really doesn't. Too bad we're talking about it. Minnesota is 35-25 since that win. And then they blew a chance to make the Big Ten title game after that win over Penn State. They lost 2 of their final 3 that year.
Yeah.
But I think it's something, it certainly is on my mind this week, Landis. This Minnesota team is not as good as that Minnesota team, but we've talked several times in the last couple of weeks that Max Brosmer and that Minnesota passing game have really kind of figured it out in the second half of the year. They have some guys, they have skill guys. It's not irrelevant to me. I understand it's 5 years ago, but it's not irrelevant to me. You know?
Yeah, no, we identified this game as a potential spot a couple weeks ago, I think, when Minnesota was in the middle of, was it winning 4 in a row, right? And that game in 2019 was not so much a spot. It was just 2 good teams playing each other.
Yes.
And one of them won, right? So this is a little different. But there are things that Minnesota does, and I think, some curiosity still about Penn State that could lead this to being a game. It's not like Penn State's going into this game a 3-touchdown favorite, right? So I think Penn State's got to play well here. I do find this to be a rather interesting spot for the number 4 team in the country.
Minnesota has a pretty good pass defense statistically, but as you consistently point out, it's a lot of that is based on who have you played. They do have 16 interceptions. That's tied for 4th in the nation. But the quarterbacks they have faced, in Big Ten play, Cade McNamara at Iowa, Alex Orji at Michigan, Miller Moss at USC, who's gotten benched since then, Ethan Garbers at UCLA, who's played pretty well at times, but he threw 3 picks against Minnesota. Billy Edwards from Maryland threw 3 picks against Minnesota. Luke Altmaier in the Illinois-Minnesota game that Minnesota managed to win, which is their best win of the year. He actually played pretty well, threw for 226. And then Ethan Kaliak-Manis, last time out, threw for 240 and 3 touchdowns as Rutgers beat Minnesota, which kind of maybe brought Minnesota back down to earth a little bit. EPA, again, this is another play-by-play metric. On dropbacks, when teams drop back to pass, Minnesota's defense is 16th. When teams run the ball, it's 44th. Their defense overall is pretty good. But again, Penn State's good on both sides of the ball. The drive-by-drive metrics we use from Brian Fremeau, they're 6th on offense and 8th on defense. So I'm sort of setting this all up for, I am kind of thinking that Minnesota can give Penn State a game here. Since week 6, Max Brosmer is the number 4 rated quarterback in the Power 4. Penn State's defense statistically is better against the run than it is against the pass. I'm super interested if Minnesota can throw on Penn State a little bit.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think Penn State's pass defense is bad at all. I wouldn't say that, but I'm curious if they can throw a little bit and make it a game. But Penn State has been taking care of business since the Ohio State loss, 84-16 combined score against Washington and Purdue the last 2 weeks. And then there's some other games where it's like, well, maybe you would have looked at a team like Washington. Can they come in and throw it on Penn State? And the answer was like, not at all. So
yeah,
that's the game to me. Can Minnesota throw it to enough of a degree to make it competitive? And I think maybe the answer is yes.
That's where I'm at. I don't know. I don't know if Minnesota is going to be able to run the ball very well here. Minnesota hasn't run the ball well all season. Penn State's run defense has been very good this year. I think the pathway has to be throwing the ball if you're Minnesota. Obviously, Penn State can get after it up front. They can pressure quarterbacks. Abdul Carter was just named a finalist for the Lombardi Award. He's got 15 pressures and 4 sacks in his last 3 games. Guy. He's up to 8 sacks now on the season. He's top 10. He's not leading the country, but he's top 10. Minnesota's had some O-line issues, but I think that's shown up far more in the run game than it has in trying to protect Max Brosmer. So at home, I think they stand a decent chance of giving Max Brosmer some time to complete some passes down the field. I was just like kind of poking through some of the receiver numbers. Minnesota's slot receiver, Elijah Spencer, last 3 games, 22 targets, 17 receptions, 227 yards, and 2 touchdowns. There's just another guy emerging there with Daniel Jackson and Darius Taylor, who I still don't think we talk about enough. Who's become like an incredible receiving back. I guess that Rutgers game, both Darius Taylor and Ja Joyner were hurt and playing hurt, and they've had a week off to recover. So maybe you get like a fresher version of both of those guys. They're probably, I don't know, maybe Coy Parrish is the most impactful player on Minnesota's defense at this point. When you think of like X factors for Minnesota, Darius Taylor and Ja Joyner are pretty high up on the list. So if both those guys are in a better form, I definitely think Minnesota's got a shot here. You mentioned all the interceptions that those quarterbacks had thrown against Minnesota. That is a bit of a trend for the Gophers. They have 20 takeaways this year. It's top 10 in the country. It's tied for the most in the Big Ten, but 17 of them have come in Minnesota's 6 wins, and they only have 3 takeaways in their 4 losses. Okay.
So they got to turn it over to win.
That has to be part of their winning recipe, I think. And Penn State doesn't turn the ball over a lot.
Shout out to Minnesota defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman for giving us a little bit of a definition on the Andy Kotelnicki offense. Quote, the first thing that jumps out is the 20 personnel groupings they've used through different weeks. Who is on the field? How are they using them? Where are they aligned? Where are they lined up? So if you said to yourself, I wonder how many different personnel groupings and packages Andy Kotelnicki has in the bag. The guy who has studied film to get ready for him this week, who had an extra week off to do it, says 20. So I really want to watch this. It's a crowded, just like for our folks, we know you're planning your week. Our 16 Northern games, 5 are at noon and 6 are at 3:30.
Yeah.
So this is a 3:30 game, so it's in a crowded window. I would try to watch it. Penn State's favored by 11. You and I both like Minnesota to cover. I was really thinking about it of would this be a spot? And I'm on alert for it, but I did not get all the way there because I also think Penn State is in take care of business mode. Drew Aller, 37 of 47, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 467 yards the last 2 weeks. We've talked about it a bunch. They really have just responded to the Ohio State loss in a really good way. But I think Minnesota is going to be mad coming off the Minnesota loss. And I do think I'm very curious about this. They really change how much they blitz people from game to game. They blitzed Ethan Kaliakmanis and Rutgers 60% of the time or something. They were 63% of the time Minnesota blitzed Rutgers. And Ethan Kaliakmanis was only 8 of 21 against the blitz, but he threw all 3 touchdowns against the blitz. So they made big plays against that. But when they played Maryland, they only blitzed Billy Edwards 20% of the time. And then when they played Illinois, they blitzed Luke Altmaier 48% of the time. So to me, that's a good defensive coordinator who changes things up. I'm really curious what they do. Drew Aller's good against the blitz. So I'm really like, I'm intrigued. I'm just like, I'm not telling you I have a great handle on this game, but I would recommend it as a game to put on your TV because I'm really intrigued by it.
I'm intrigued by it too, because I also feel like Penn State's offense has been a little too Tyler Warren-y. I like him a lot. I like him. He's awesome. He's great. I love the ways they get him the ball. I don't love that he's been Penn State's leading rusher 2 out of the last 3 games. Like they gotta get more out of Nick Singleton in particular. We had Nick Singleton on our midseason all North team as an all-purpose back. He was averaging 120 yards from scrimmage per game in his first 4 games. Then he didn't play against UCLA. And now that production's been cut in half in the 5 games since then.
Really?
67.8 yards per game from scrimmage for Nick Singleton. So I think he's pretty clearly not healthy, and he's just trying to fight through it. Like, give him credit for that. But that is a potential explosive playmaker that I don't think Penn State is able to get the most out of right now. And like Katron Allen has been hot and cold, and the receivers still are kind of what they are. So it's I don't know. I think if Minnesota comes in with a good plan for Tyler Warren, then this is very much a game.
Tyler Warren, 136 yards from scrimmage on average the last 2 weeks. Again, just like getting him the ball, direct snaps, and throwing him the ball a lot. So I'd watch it. I'm 29-22 Penn State.
I'm 27-17. So cover for the Gophers.
So cover for the Gophers from both of us. All right, next game up is Colorado at Kansas. This is another 3:30 game. Colorado on the road is a 2.5-point favorite with the Jayhawks coming off the big win over BYU. Look at us.
Yeah. Do you want to sneak in some Juju Lewis here before we talk about the game? He has committed to Colorado.
He has committed. Oh, look at the timing on us. Like we're right as we get to Colorado. So this is Juju Lewis, borderline 5-star quarterback who was originally committed to USC, has some relationships with the Indiana program, had visited Georgia, right? Had certainly been in the mix with Georgia, but has committed to Colorado. And at this point, assuming he keeps this commitment, which maybe isn't, an assumption that we would make right now, but this is where he's committed to in signing days in a couple weeks, he could be Colorado's starting quarterback next year.
Yeah, no, I think I guess there were 2 lingering questions about the future of Colorado. It's like, one, is Deion Sanders going to stay, which he's given every indication that he will. And then 2, who is going to be the heir to Shadur Sanders? Because there's not one in-house. They were definitely going to have to go out and get one. And they may still go out and get one via the transfer portal. We'll see. But right now, it looks like Juju Lewis would be that guy. I'm sure he is committing to Colorado because he wants to be that guy to succeed Shadur Sanders. So for a program that has definitely made some splashes in high school recruiting, but it hasn't been the lifeblood of what Deion Sanders has done there. It's a pretty impressive recruiting win for the Buffaloes to get a guy who was once, I think, maybe the number 2 quarterback in the class behind Bryce Underwood. He's fallen down a little bit in the rankings, Juju Lewis has, but he's still a pretty highly rated quarterback.
In the 24/7 composite ratings, he is the number 35 player in this class and the number 6 quarterback. Bryce Underwood committed to LSU. Keelan Russell committed to Alabama. Tavian St. Clair committed to Ohio State. Deuce Knight once committed to Notre Dame, now committed to Auburn. Houston Longstreet, who flipped to USC after Julian Lewis decommitted, and now Julian Lewis. So this is one of those things, like there was a lot of conversations, have been a lot of conversations about Deion Sanders and not doing enough high school recruiting. So when they get like a borderline 5-star guy, it has to be a big deal. And by the way, when they got a 5-star guy last year in Jordan Seaton, they put him in the starting lineup and he's played left tackle and been good. So they're not afraid when they get a dude to go put him on the field.
So there's Sullivan's in the comments making a good point. We don't have to really dissect this entire thing. He's reclassified and he's small. Like, I could talk for 20 minutes about how I don't think Julian Lewis should be Colorado's starting quarterback next year. I won't do that right now, but I think it's a point worth keeping in anyone's mind as they digest this commitment. Is like,
does it not feel like early playing time has been part of his decision-making process?
100%, but that doesn't mean it's right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you have to go prove it. And so the idea of whatever, it feels like maybe you have to make clear to him that he would have an opportunity to come in and play right away. But if you're 17 years old and 170 pounds, there's things you have to show in camp and spring football and then August camp before you get on the field. So point well taken. We appreciate the commenters. But again, like we can't not make a big deal out of like a borderline 5-star guy committing to a Northern team.
It's a great recruiting win. Yeah, it's a great recruiting win. Yeah.
It's just there's so much. Like Colorado obviously is so interesting right now. Like what is going to happen with Shedeur Sanders? Where is he going to be picked? Where's Travis Hunter going to be picked? Could that have some effect on Deion Sanders' future? He said, I'm here, Colorado. I'm not going anywhere. But of course, every coach who ever left said some version of that before he left. But he also may feel like he's found a home there and he doesn't have to follow his son necessarily. So like, it is fascinating, but it's a good day for Colorado football. And it's also because they have a chance against Kansas to basically like, they still are in control of their own destiny here, Bill, as we try. And we'll get to BYU-Arizona State in a second. BYU and Colorado control their own destiny in the Big 12 race, and Arizona State practically does. So if Colorado wins its final two games, Colorado's going to the Big 12 championship game, and it starts with Kansas, who's rolling.
The most dangerous team in the country, the Kansas Jayhawks, which I didn't realize.
Like for a second, like
I'm not being facetious.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And I know, but like, I just want to make sure. I know you're not, but just to make sure, like, that is not a joke. They're playing like a top 25 team.
They are. They're playing how everyone who voted on them to win the Big 12 and thought they would win 9 or 10 games. That's how they're playing right now. I didn't realize this. Maybe you mentioned it and I just forgot it. In beating Iowa State and BYU, Kansas beat ranked teams in back-to-back games for the first time in program history.
Oh, I did not mention that. That's a good one.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's like which again like helps crystallize for like the expectations. Like it's Kansas, man. Like
like, and now they're playing another ranked team. Yeah,
and here they are looking for a third win in a row against a ranked team. Colorado, Kansas since October 19th are a combined 7-1. These are two of the hottest teams in college football right now. They're going to play at Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday at 3:30. This will be Kansas's last game at Arrowhead. They're 2-1 there right now. They're going to play there again next year, but it's their last game there this year. Right?
No, I don't think they are. No, because it's a one-year deal. They are fixing up their stadium, but their whole thing is it's a 1-year deal. Northwestern tore its stadium down into a 2-year deal, but Kansas is like fixing it, and they're going to play in it next year while it's still kind of being fixed up. But this is a 1 year away from home.
Okay, so they're 2-1 there, lost to TCU early, and then have won their last two at Arrowhead. This is, I don't know, it's two of the most exciting quarterbacks I think in the sport right now with the way that Jalen Daniels has been playing, and I think it's also an incredibly compelling receiver defensive back matchup when you talk about Colorado's receivers going up against the Kansas corner duo of Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant. It's odd to me, like Kansas does not have a great pass defense statistically. I think a lot of that is an inability to pressure quarterbacks. They haven't done it all that consistently this year, but the corners are awesome. Like Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant are probably two of the best 35 cornerbacks in college football, maybe 40, like top 40 corners in college football. So I think they'll be up for the challenge of running with these receivers, of creating tight windows for Shedeur Sanders to have to deal with. I'm interested to see whether or not Kansas can actually get some pressure on Shedeur. We know that he likes to invite that pressure, so teams even that don't sack the quarterback a lot typically tend to do it against Colorado just because of how long Shedeur holds the ball, but the trade-off is he's Shedeur and he makes crazy plays when he does that. So I guess there's a world where Shedeur is rather unbothered in this game and is able to kind of throw it all over Kansas. But even if he does, and I kind of think he will, I'm not betting against Kansas's offense right now. And I know like BYU actually did a nice job against Kansas last week, and we'll talk about that defensively and really kind of bottled up that rushing attack in particular. I don't know that Colorado is going to be able to do the same to Kansas. I think they get back to running the ball the way they've run it all year, and we continue to see strong play out of Jalen Daniels.
From producer Mike, Lance Leipold now has 4 wins over ranked teams and has a chance at number 5. That would tie him with Bud Moore's 5 wins over ranked opponents for a Kansas coach. Like, again, this is Kansas and what he is doing in this short period of time. He beat Oklahoma State in 2022. He beat Oklahoma in 2023. And now these back-to-back games against Iowa State and BYU. I asked you 2 weeks ago as we looked forward to this and seeing that Kansas was going to play the top 2 teams in the Big 12 and BYU and Colorado, I said, do you think they'll get one of them? And you said, yeah. They already got one. And you and I are both picking them to get another one. The same game. We're picking the same game here. 31-30 Kansas for me, 35-31 Kansas for you. Like, did you struggle with this, or did you just think this is the deal?
No, I definitely struggled because I think it's hard to pick against Kansas right now with the way that Kansas has played the last month. But I also love the way Colorado's defense has been playing. And I really do think they're a well-balanced team. And like Dion has talked before about all three phases, how good they are. So it was tough.
This is a worth a splicing conversation for 1 minute, because we got a review on Apple Podcasts. I like to check the reviews sometimes. And somebody was critiquing us for calling Colorado a balanced team. So I do think when we call them a balanced team, it's like you can talk about balance like offense, defense, special teams, all three phases. And when you call them a balanced team just there, you're talking about this is no longer just a team that has to completely rely on its offense because it can't stop anybody. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So in that way, they are balanced now.
They cannot run the ball.
They cannot run the ball. Within their offense, they have zero balance. They are literally the most unbalanced team in the country. They've just stopped trying. But Washington last year, like at times, I think kind of stopped trying and it seemed to work. There have been times with Ohio State the past couple of years especially when Ohio State was struggling to run the ball in short yardage and they had running back injuries. I just said, stop trying. Why are you trying to do something you're not good at? They're not good at it, so they've stopped trying. But actually, now that I've said it, I'm not sure last year's Washington is a terrible comparison for this year's Colorado. And last year's Washington made the national title game.
I don't hate the comparison. I think that Washington's offensive line, I think, was significantly better than Colorado's.
Their offensive line was great last year, but Colorado's is much improved from a year ago. Washington's had the best offensive line in the country a year ago. So I don't want to go too far with this, but I want to acknowledge, yes, correctly, they can't run the ball, but I almost tipped the cap to them for just giving up on it. Because if you're not good at something, at some point you have to be realistic and then lean into what you are good at. Washington last year was 106th in the nation in rushing yards per game with 118 per game. And this year, Colorado is
second to last, I think.
133rd at 77 rushing yards, ahead of only Kent State. So Washington was a little better. And Washington was better, but I think in terms of what you're trying to do, if you're trying to wrap your head around Colorado, I think that's close enough. I'll take Michael Penix, Shadur Sanders conversation. I'll take that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Penix did something. We don't have to have that conversation, but give me Penix. But
oh, for real? Oh, I think I might take Shadur.
Pocket, yeah, Penix. I don't think Penix is running backwards 20 yards and taking a sack.
You and I both voted for Penix to win the Heisman last year.
We did.
And I might take Shadur. Oh, no, I do want to do this. Oh, wait. Okay, that's okay.
But anyway, point well taken by the comment. I don't if balance is the wrong word for me saying that I think their defense is pretty good, then I'll use a different word, but that's what I mean. Yeah.
It's not the wrong word. It's just that we're just making clear the context. Yeah. So anyway, as I was saying, I think Shadur Sanders is better than the guy I voted for in the Heisman last year, and that's why I think his team is going to lose this week to a 4-16. Anyway, football. I would go to Kansas and do a week there and talk to Lance Leipold and this staff and these players about what they've done here. They're a completely different team than they were in the first half of the season by sticking to exactly what they do, right? Yeah. They didn't change. They just fought through the storm and came out the other side, and now they're showing who they could be. And so watch this game, 3:30, field goal game.
I think it's as simple as Kansas stopped turning the ball over. They turned it over 11 times in the first 5 games and have turned it over 3 times in the last 5 games.
Their Heisman candidate quarterback couldn't stop throwing it to the other team.
Yeah.
And they lost a bunch of one-score games as a result. So, but Lance Leipold did not bench that Heisman candidate quarterback, and now he's showing what he really can be. So here we are.
Yeah.
Watch this game. Army at Notre Dame. This is not in the afternoon window. It's 7:00 at night in Yankee Stadium. Notre Dame is a 14.5-point favorite, Landis.
I'm fired up for this game. I picked a larger scoring margin here for Notre Dame than you did, but I want it to be more along the lines of where you are. So I'm glad that you did that. Ton of history between these two teams, right?
Yeah.
These guys used to rule college football.
Yep. I think
they
Split
played
Zone Duo did like a whole episode on
They
that. This
did,
week.
yeah. I was actually listening to a little bit of it this morning. So Army and Navy like played pretty regularly from 1913 until about 1980, and then have played kind of more sparingly since then. This will only be the fourth meeting since 1998. Notre Dame has won 15 straight. Army has not beaten Notre Dame since 1958 in South Bend. So Notre Dame leads 39-8-4, 8-4, excuse me, in the all-time series. This is the 24th time in 52 meetings that this game will be played at Yankee Stadium. Obviously, much of that at the old Yankee Stadium. This is the new Yankee Stadium where they've only played one time. It is undefeated Army. It is Notre Dame fighting for its playoff life. I am going to be locked in on this game.
And in the North, it's not as much competition. There's 3 night games in the North. This one at 7. Iowa State, Utah at 7:30, and Cincinnati-Kansas State at 8. So you should be able to get your peepers on this one. Because the point is, I'm 26-21 Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 31-20 Notre Dame.
31-20. I'm high. I'm wrong. I don't think Notre Dame's going to score that much.
But we think it's a game, is the bottom line. We think it's a game, and it's really difficult because we've seen a version of this already, and then Navy turned it over 6 times against Notre Dame and then kind of like lost their way a little bit, but we were hyped going into that one. But Army remains super efficient and probably is a slightly better version of what Navy was doing. And I don't think they're going to turn it over like this. They won a game this year with their backup quarterback, which I think showed something with them. We had Kanye Udo on the show, who's is a little bit different too. Like, that's a guy who had FBS scholarship offers and is probably a better player than you typically would find at a service academy, and he has the ball in his hands a lot. He's not Jeremiah Love, who's the great running back for Notre Dame, but he's like a good player, and I think he'll show up in a game like this. And frankly, it almost feels like there are 4 service academies this year, and it's Army, Navy, Air Force, and Notre Dame. They're the Catholic outpost in Indiana, and that whatever they do for the military. But like, this game might feel like it's being played in 1945 when you turn it on and watch how these teams are going to go about it, because there's going to be like a whole lot of quarterback running, right?
There's going to be a ton of quarterback running in this game. I think a lot of the conversation about Army is similar to what we said about Navy at the time, that it's not your great grandfather's Army football, right? They're gonna throw it a little bit. Bryson Daly would be up. I think he would lead the country in passing efficiency if he had enough attempts. Very similar conversation we had about Blake Horvath a couple weeks ago when Notre Dame played Navy. Bryson Daly is also number 2 in the country behind Ashton Genty in rushing touchdowns, and he has 7 passing touchdowns. He averages 80 passing yards per game, which is a pretty nice number for an Army quarterback, and he averages 132 rushing yards per game, which is 5th in the country. Kanye Udo is just under 100 rushing yards per game. He has 9 touchdowns. Like, this is the number 1 rushing offense in the country. None of that is surprising, but even within that, like, this is a peak version, I think, of an Army rushing attack. Army's always good running the ball because that's what Army does. They're not always averaging 6 yards per carry while averaging over 300 yards per game. Like that, that makes Army a little different. And I think the people, I think, will be quick to look at the Notre Dame Navy final and just maybe assume something similar is going to happen here. Navy actually ran it okay in that game. They just couldn't hold on to the ball, as you said. They fumbled 7 times, excuse me. They lost 5 of them, but they also averaged over 5 yards a carry and ran for 222 yards against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense is very good this year. I would put it up there among the best defenses in the country, no doubt about it. They are better against the pass than they are against the run. And Howard Cross, Notre Dame's defensive tackle, last I saw, unless you saw something different, is at least questionable for this game. So Notre Dame would be a little light, little shorthanded on the defensive line, perhaps. I mostly just think that Army's not going to make the same mistakes that Navy did, and that will allow Army to keep this close and make it interesting. And then I also think that Army's defense is better than Navy's.
Listed as questionable. Howard Cross, who did not play last week against Virginia. The one thing is, I think Notre Dame's locked in. If Notre Dame felt vulnerable, I think one of us might have picked Army. This is not, for me, my pick is not an indication of Notre Dame vulnerability. They know who they are. They've overcome injuries. They're playing really well. I think this program is in lockstep, and they are 1,000% not going to overlook Army, not ranked Army. I mean, Notre Dame plays USC this week. Army would beat USC. Like, this is the best. This is the game to get Notre Dame into the playoff. This is practically, and it's frankly a game. If Army beats Notre Dame, we're going to start having conversations about Army versus Boise for the G5 spot in the playoff. And if Army's undefeated, it's like, well, Boise took their shot and almost beat Oregon, but Army actually did it. I don't know, brother. I think that's a compelling Army case. And then if Boise loses, all of a sudden, so like, this is borderline a play-in game for the playoff.
I don't even know that Boise would have to lose if Army, because Army's already in the American Championship against Tulane. If Army beats Notre Dame and then presumably beats Tulane in the American Championship game, I'm not feeling very comfortable if I'm Boise.
No, that's 2 ranked wins. And like, Boise doesn't have wins like that out there. So the loser's out of the playoff discussion. The winner is firmly in the playoff discussion. How about that for Army Notre Dame in late November? How about ball?
Stakes. We love it. Yeah, I kind of wanted to go to this game. We're going to Ohio State, Indiana. It makes sense, but I really wish I was going to be in the Bronx for this one because
you got time?
No, it's fine. I don't like traveling to New York. It's fine. New York's in the butt.
I got Hoosiers Buckeyes covered, man. If you want to go,
if this game was in South Bend, if this was in South Bend, or even if it was up at West Point, I think I would almost certainly be at that game.
Okay,
but I don't want to
just go over the George Washington Bridge. It's okay. I can give you directions.
The last time I went over the George Washington Bridge, it took me 3 hours.
Okay,
thanks.
Okay, if we could parachute you into the Yankee Stadium, maybe you'd be there. Again, this is a 7 p.m. start. Another game we suggest that you watch. All right, last one off the top for us is BYU at Arizona State. Another 3:30 game. BYU, who's been in the playoff mix, was undefeated. They're now a 3-point underdog against Arizona State. As we said, this is a borderline like win and you're in situation. Like, BYU controls its own destiny, and Arizona State almost does, unless there's like a 4-way tie. Then they somehow maybe wouldn't make the Big 12 title game. So I want to make a point that I don't want to be disingenuous about it, because I didn't apply this to my Kansas-Colorado pick, because I picked Kansas to beat Colorado. But now I'm going to apply it to my BYU-Arizona State analysis, which is Kansas beat BYU last week because a punt hit a guy in the head. Like, that's kind of true. It was a great call by Lance Leipold, a surprise pooch punt off a BYU player that didn't do anything wrong. He was like covering a guy, on what he thought was an offensive play, and it hit him, and Kansas recovered it like at the 5-yard line and got a free touchdown. So, and then also in that game, Jake Retzlaff for BYU threw his worst pass of the year on an interception, on an end zone fade. And Kalani Sitake this week was talking a lot about the mistakes they made. I'm not definitively applying this, but he was talking about alignment, technique, running wrong routes. It makes me wonder if there was like the guy intended there on the pass gave up leverage in a way that, like, Jake Retzlaff threw it inside and the receiver kind of played it outside and it went right to the DB. And it wasn't just like, I don't think it was just like a huge Jake Retzlaff miss. I think it was a miscommunication, or maybe like the guy was supposed to be somewhere and the corner took it away and he gave it up too easily. But anyway, too many mistakes. And so I am having gone back again to that game. And so this is the thing where it is disingenuous. If I'm sort of like, you know what, I'm not sure that was super representative of BYU. Can I give Kansas credit for the win without dinging BYU too much for the loss? Because the result is I picked Kansas to win this week, but I'm also picking BYU to win this week, because it did not fundamentally change my view of BYU as much as maybe I thought it did on first blush.
Yeah, I think you can middle that a little bit if you want to.
Thank you.
I think because I think you're right. I don't disagree with anything you said. I just kind of think it's more than that with BYU. I think BYU's offense is trending in obviously in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And it's having a heck of a time finishing drives right now. It's BYU's 98th in the country overall in red zone touchdown percentage. It was 0 for 4 against Kansas. It's 3 for 12 in its last 3 games. Now Arizona State defensively is also bad in the red zone, so maybe this is the week that BYU gets right. But I just don't. I think BYU's defense is excellent, and I was pretty impressed with how it shut down Kansas last week. It was Kansas's lowest rushing total of the season, only 73 yards and 2 yards per carry. Like that's a really good day against that rushing attack for BYU's defense, and that's what Arizona State wants to do too. So if BYU's defense can bring that same kind of effort, then BYU can absolutely win this game. I just think I think Arizona State's hot. I think they have a quarterback in Sam Leavitt and a running back in Cam Scatabo who are really both kind of clicking at the same time. And I just don't know if BYU is right offensively to score enough to win this game.
So that's the thing.
Or
like
any
you
game
said,
right now.
The red zone stuff is real. The red zone stuff is not entirely new. They got to the 9, kicked a field goal. They got to the 5 in the last minute of the first half, and Retzlaff threw that terrible pick. They got to the 17 and kicked a field goal. And then late in the game, this was just like a terrible sequence. This is a game-winning sequence for BYU potentially, right? 1st and 10 at the 15-yard line, ran it up the middle, kind of a boring play, kind of didn't block a linebacker, got like 3 yards. 2nd down, jet sweep, and they wound up with 3 blockers for 5 defenders on that side of the field, and the 2 unblocked guys like tackled the jet sweep guy. So now it's 3rd down. They ran option to the boundary, which again is like, I feel like that could be our narrative podcast, option to the boundary. Like
short
when
side
it works,
option.
it's short side up. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
They had like the edge defender that Jake Retzlaff was reading, like played it great and was all over the pitch. And also the receiver didn't make his block. So that was 3rd down. And then on 4th down, they finally threw it. So they didn't. Jake Retzlaff has been kind of like a playmaking quarterback all year. And this is one of those things. They throw a red zone touchdown. They throw a red zone interception in the first half, and then they get in the red zone with the game on the line, and they run it on their first 3 plays. That's not who they are.
Yeah.
But I think they maybe got spooked, and then they tried to throw it on 4th down on a gotta have it play, and the left tackle got smoked. And Jake Retzlaff had to throw it too quick, and he threw it short of the sticks. So it was like an encapsulation of everything that has been going wrong with BYU, but I think they're better than that. I do. I think they can fix it. And Kalani Sitake was just like, too many mistakes, like we got to be better. And I think they will be better. And your point about Arizona State and this BYU defense, Arizona State's been playing really well. Like the only kind of good defense they've played, though, is Utah. And I think BYU, again, by the Fremo rankings, Utah's defense is 15th, BYU's is 16th. So I think it's a reasonable comparison. When Arizona State beat Utah, that was the game when Cam Rising's body was breaking down and Kyle Woodingham wouldn't take him out of the game. Cam Rising threw 3 picks. Utah outgained Arizona State in that game, and they scored 2 touchdowns on 47 and 50-yard runs by Cam Scatabo. So they did not like march up and down the field against Utah, even though Sam Leavitt's been really good in the second half of the year, very similar to Max Brosmer. Like that game, Utah helped Arizona State in every way possible in that game, in a way that I don't think BYU is going to help Arizona State in this game. And that's the only good defense that Arizona State's played in the second half of the year. So I think the BYU defense can stand up. I think they can figure some stuff out in the red zone, and I think BYU can go on the road and win this game. I think this season has been too good for them to let it slip away here. I have BYU 28-24.
I have Arizona State winning 24-20. I don't disagree with anything you just said. Like I don't mean to come off as thinking that I think BYU is reeling offensively to the point where it would go and like lose to Oklahoma State or something like that, right? Like I just think Arizona State has been playing really well and is playing its best football of the year. There's a huge game in Tempe. Like I think it's going to be a pretty good crowd there. I was reading some stuff. I think it was at Deseret News covering BYU. Said this might be the biggest game of Kalani Sitake's tenure at BYU because of the stakes here for the Big 12 championship game. So there's a lot of pressure. There's pressure on both teams, but Arizona State's got to feel like it's playing with house money, and BYU's like trying to keep a very promising season from unraveling at the end. So there's a lot of factors combining there for me to take Arizona State close. I have 24-20.
Just as a reminder, preseason, Arizona State picked last in the Big 12, 16 out of 16. BYU picked 13th in the Big 12. These two teams last year were both 2-7 in their conferences, Arizona State and the Pac-12. And just as a reminder, as we fight with each other about playoff rankings and as we complain and get worried about the SEC taking up all the spots, we are in a situation where in the second to last week of the regular season, Arizona State and BYU, who were picked at the bottom of their conference, are playing a play-in game for the college football playoff opportunity. Playing a play-in game for the Big 12 championship game, which will then be a play-in game for the college football playoff. Like, it's awesome. Yeah. So please, let's not let the arguing and the bias and the people, let's not let people like us, for people like you, like ruin stuff like this, because we just went through 4 games off the top, Landis. 4 games with absolute playoff implications. 7 of the 8 teams. Now, 6 of the 8 teams we just talked about have real playoff implications. Penn State, Colorado, Army, Notre Dame, BYU, and Arizona State. Let's go. Let's go. And it's the changing context of this sport that has allowed this to happen. Yeah. So let's celebrate the opportunities here for a lot of fan bases and a lot of great teams. I'm excited to watch ball this weekend, brother.
So am I. This is the best Saturday, I think, potentially the best Saturday we've had in a while.
Yeah,
it's pretty loaded.
And a great point by producer Mike. He says, this is why teleportation should be everyone's choice for a superpower, because you could teleport yourself to Notre Dame-Army. You could watch Indiana-Ohio State in person and then teleport yourself to watch Notre Dame-Army in person. Mike, you're all over it, man. You knew it.
I mean, I've been on that for a while. I don't know how anyone could think otherwise. Like,
yeah.
Just even last week when I was in Chicago for the Ohio State Northwestern game, it's like you get up on Sunday morning and you're like, man, I got to drive 5 hours home. And you're like, snap of the finger, you could be home immediately.
Yeah.
Teleportation should be a real thing.
But what if you could run really fast? Wouldn't that be better? No. Yeah.
No, because that still requires some physical exercise.
If Bill could run to New York, that would not be as good as snapping your fingers and being there.
Correct.
Okay, so just to reset again, the Big 12 race right now, BYU and Colorado are both 6-1. Arizona State and Iowa State are both 5-2. We'll get to Iowa State in a little bit. Like, they're not out of it, but these are the 2 games that matter the most for the Big 12 race right now. All right, quick break. When we come back, a bunch more games to cover, including Iowa, Maryland, next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. I did want to apologize off the top. Well, not off the top here. I should have said this earlier. For something that I said on Wednesday, Landis. And I need to apologize. My daughter pointed this out to me. This is the text that she sent me after we talked about Wicked and Gladiator 2 on What You Watching, What You Eating, What You Thinking. She said, you didn't invent Wikediator, fool. People have been saying that. Maybe not that exact phrase, but the idea that could Wicked and Gladiator 2 be like Oppenheimer and Barbie. I thought maybe I invented that. And I said, what? How come every time I invent something, it's already invented? And she said, because you are a man. So I didn't.
All I'm saying is I hadn't heard it. I'm willing to give you credit for it because
I did not mean to mansplain Wikediator to the world. So I apologize for my lack of. But this is, I mean, it's hard. I think one of the ways to be a podcast host is to think up things that everybody already thought of and pretend you invented it. That's sort of one of the keys to doing this whole thing. So I apologize, but I also don't apologize. All right, next one is Iowa at Maryland. This is noon. This is Iowa -6. This is just like crazy. Like, does Iowa have a quarterback? We're back to it again. Jackson Stratton, the guy who was a linebacker, scout team linebacker a couple of weeks ago, is probably going to have to play. Sounds like Cade McNamara is a probably not, but maybe not a no. Brendan Sullivan is a no, just from a health standpoint. Iowa's just like still good at football, so I don't want to like overlook that all year. Their defense is still really good. They forced 20 turnovers. That's 10th in the country. They're 14th defensively in the Fremo ratings, which is pretty good. They've given up the 7th fewest longest plays in the country. Like Iowa's still pretty good, but their quarterback situation, everything's clearly cloudy right now. Everything's clearly cloudy right now. That is Kirk Ferentz on Tuesday about their quarterback forecast. So great defense. Caleb Johnson has run for a touchdown in every single game this year. He has 20 rushing touchdowns on the season. You don't want to lose sight of something like that. But man, Iowa is having QB issues. And so I am actually going to pick Maryland kind of because of that. Because I'm just now to Jackson Stratton's credit, when he had to come in the UCLA game, they went on a 13-play, 61-yard touchdown drive, but that was a drive, and this is potentially a game, and I don't know, brother.
I just don't think it could be any worse than it's already been. So, like, I don't. Maybe like Brendan Sullivan and Cade McNamara are scholarship players. I get that, like they've played in one big games, but like they've been awful. So I just. And Iowa has found ways to like score points against middling teams with those guys as their quarterback because Caleb Johnson's awesome. And I kind of think Maryland's season's going down the tubes here. So I'm still picking Iowa 35-28 because Iowa overs have been cashing all year.
No quarterbacks but cashing overs. What do you know?
Yeah. Billy Edwards is in a real funk too. Maryland's quarterback. He has not played well in his last 3 games, 2 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's been under 60% completion percentage in all 3 of those games, to the point where I think you and I have sort of kicked around the idea of might they go to MJ Morris at quarterback, and that doesn't seem to be happening. So I don't know. I really think Maryland was in a bad way. It was like a rebuilding year, and then they just kind of get it handed to them by a Rutgers team that I don't know that sits very well with them. That could be like a pick yourself off the ground and rally moment, but I kind of think Maryland's just going to stay on the ground.
So 8-2 Iowa overs, producer Mike says, and Mike says Iowa overs for Maryland are 7-3. So like my low score probably is not a good pick.
Look at Mike.
Maryland last week outgained Rutgers 457-370, but they gave up five straight scores in the middle of the game and lost by 14. So that's not like they moved the ball though. Like they outgained them. It continues. I think Damon Evans, the Maryland athletic director, maybe just has a weekly radio hit, but he continues to flame his own football program. Like every week there's something. On why hasn't Maryland as a football team gotten better over the course of the year? That's something that we've got to take a hard look at. Believe me, I sit here and I've been watching it and I've said the same thing. Why haven't we actually gotten better as the year has progressed? And we've got to go back and we've really got to evaluate that. There's some things that I think we all see. I don't want to say anything definitively yet because you have to take a hard look at it. But obviously you can't make some of the mistakes that we've made. We're not a program that can turn the ball over. We're not a program that can have penalties. Those are the same things that we've been talking about for quite some time. And I know our fans are tired of hearing it. I know they're frustrated by it. But those things have got to be fixed just to give ourselves an opportunity to compete in this Big Ten. And then we also have to look at some things as other things as well. That's what you do when things aren't going well. You have to evaluate yourself. You have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, what am I missing? What are we missing? So Mike Locksley's not going to get fired at the end of this year. He better be good next year. He's getting fired. Like his AD is, I think it's not fair. Mike Locksley, 3-9 in year 1, then the COVID year, then 3 straight bowl seasons, 23-16 overall. And now this. I thought it would be a step back year. It's a step back year. And the AD is like, I can't tolerate this. It's like, who do you think you are? This isn't Michigan or Nebraska. It's Maryland football. Like, this is intolerable. I think he's going too far. So anyway, I'm not so sure Mike Locksley's not going into the locker room and playing these AD quotes for his players and being like, let's go prove our AD wrong. I don't know. I'm waiting for a little like maybe that's it. Like he's rallying the troops by setting fire to the program. I thought Maryland would be bad, and they have been bad, but I'm like picking Maryland to rise up. Rise up, Maryland. Isn't it crazy? I don't know of any other AD who's like regularly doing this to his own program when his own program is not 1-10.
Did he hire Loxley? Damon Evans?
I don't think so, but I think I don't know enough.
He's been there since 2018, but I don't know if he got there like.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think
he hired him.
Okay.
Does that to me is like something you say about a coach like you didn't hire, you don't care all that much about, and like eager to bring in your own guy. It's like
I don't know what's happening. This is crazy. So anyway, before we get to the next game, so I'm 23-18 Maryland, you're 35-28 Iowa. Brian in the chat asked what we do during the breaks when we take a little break. I take a sip of water and I hit the button to reset my brain because I'm a college football robot. But no, it's just hard to talk. For me, at least, it's hard to talk for like 100 minutes without catching your breath.
Yeah, I like to take a beat, catch my breath, maybe blow my nose, something like that. Yeah. So it's just, and like someday we might, maybe we'll have, like, we have all kinds of, like, come back next year. I think this has been a great, so we did this last year, but this is the first year of really doing it. I think it's been a great season, Landis. What do you think? It's been an awesome season. Yeah.
Like the football has been great, but I think it's been a great year of Kings of the North. I'm very happy with what we're doing. I'm excited by our audience. I'm proud of the product we put out, but it's going to be even better next year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
If Damon Evans was in charge of us, he'd be like, I don't know about these guys.
Get him out of here.
That guy talks too much. Okay. Next is, Damon Evans is going to be mad because I paused here because I didn't know what game was next. Damon, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. Wisconsin, Nebraska. Is that what we're doing next? Yeah, Wisconsin.
It is
Nebraska.
Wisconsin, Nebraska. Which spiraling offense would you like to pick?
I can't. How do we get to a spot? So last week the whole deal was Nebraska USC was new offensive coordinator for Nebraska, new quarterback USC. Now it's new offensive coordinator for Wisconsin. Second week was offensive coordinator for Nebraska. Wild.
It is wild. So we don't. Luke Fickell, I think we mentioned it on Monday, got rather defensive when asked who was going to call plays for Wisconsin, and has since not said who will call plays for Wisconsin. But we do have reporting from Jesse Temple of The Athletic, who says that it will be tight ends coach Nate Letton who was expected to call the plays for Wisconsin. Okay. He was on Luke's staff at Cincinnati. Wide receivers coach Kenny Guyton, I think, will help signal from the sideline. Jesse also reported there's a chance that Wisconsin will huddle more and perhaps call plays off of wristbands. It just sounds like it's going to be real clunky for Wisconsin trying to navigate the world without Phil Longo as OC. Not that I thought it was the wrong decision. It's just like they might be trying to make some fairly drastic operational changes here that could gum up the works a little bit for Wisconsin. Nebraska, meanwhile, second game with Daniel Holgorsen calling plays. Daniel Holgorsen called the game against USC and then did his first press conference and then told everyone he thinks Nebraska's offensive players stink. So he called out the receivers for not being good enough perimeter blockers. Although he did say it was maybe their best perimeter blocking game of the year, because of course it was a game that he called. And then he also said that the running backs were not doing a good enough job of hitting holes that were there, and that they need to find guys who can make people miss. So I don't know if they were able to do all that in a week, but we'll see when Nebraska gets out there. I just like both these teams are in a tough spot with their offenses. Both of them desperately need a win. They're both sitting at 5 wins. They would love, I think, to get to a bowl game this year. Yeah. Nebraska has just Wisconsin and Iowa.
The extra practice with their new offensive coordinators.
Yeah. So Nebraska has Wisconsin and Iowa left. Wisconsin has Nebraska and Minnesota left. Like, there's no gimmies there. Like both. Yeah. I mean, one of the teams has to win this week, so one of them will get to a bowl game. But I don't know that the following week's games are a gimme for either of them. So this, I think, is going to be a pretty ratcheted up game between two teams that don't know how to score.
If they weren't playing each other, I think I would definitely pick both these teams to lose this week.
Yes, I think so too.
So we both picked the offense that we think would be 1 week less clunky. At least Nebraska is doing this for the second time, not the first time. So I have Nebraska 21-14.
Yeah, I have Nebraska 21-17. Very, very similar thought process.
This is a 3:30 game. Nebraska is favored at home by 2.5. Man, the coaches are calling good plays, but the players are screwing it up portion is not the best.
No, especially after one game, man. You called one game. And that's where
I'm good at this. I'm good. They're the problem. Because sometimes when coaches come in and are like, I've got to coach better, it comes back to me, I've got to coach better. So I'm like, okay, I get it. You're taking responsibility. I'm like, we don't have to go too far with that. And then when you get this other version of it, I'm like, oh, actually, let me go back and appreciate the head coaches and the assistant coaches who are like, blame the coaches, blame the millionaire coaches. Dana Holgerson's not doing this for minimum wage. I'll tell you that. The players are screwing it up.
I don't think he said anything critical, though. He didn't say anything critical about Dylan Raiola. Well, I guess he didn't. He threw 2 picks against USC.
Not if you want him to stick around, you're not going to say anything. Okay. Programs are on fire. I have a trivia question for you as we get to Northwestern at Michigan. Northwestern at Michigan, 3:30. Another one in that window. Michigan favored by 10.5. I'm going to give you 3 teams: Michigan, Northwestern, and Iowa. And now I'm going to give you the number of touchdown passes that those 3 teams have thrown this year. And you have to try to match them up, okay?
Okay.
10, 8, and 5, which is the worst in the Power 4. The fewest touchdown passes in the Power 4. Which one of those is Michigan? Which is Iowa? Which is Northwestern?
I think Northwestern is 10, Iowa is 8, and Michigan is 5.
Michigan is 10.
Okay.
Michigan is 10. Maybe we better chill on the Michigan quarterback criticism. Iowa is 8. Northwestern is the worst. 5 touchdown passes the entire year. I couldn't believe it. Senior day for Michigan. Send out these seniors. These are seniors with rings. These are seniors who helped under the tutelage of Jim Harbaugh, like reinvigorate the Michigan football program. I am sure Michigan fans will do that. I am sure Michigan fans will give the proper send off to the guys, Makari Page and like all the other guys like that, Max Bredesen, right? Like the guys who have been through the wars. This season is not good. But Michigan also is trying to make a bowl right now. And so this is huge for them. Michigan's 5-5, Northwestern's 4-6. So Northwestern's trying too, but they have Michigan and Illinois. They'd have to win both. Michigan has this, and obviously Ohio State. They had their 33-year bowl streak broken in 2008 with Rich Rodriguez. That was a huge deal at the time. Then they didn't make it in 2009 with Rich Rodriguez. Then they didn't make it in 2014 with Brady Hoke. And then in 2020, the COVID year that went sideways for them. No bowl. But like this would be, as much as I think there's a lot of stuff where it's like, it just is what it is with Michigan. They screwed up quarterback and like the offensive line hasn't been what it's been, right? Like we understand that. But like to miss a bowl would actually also kind of be quite bad. Yeah. And so even though they've lost to 3 of the top 5 teams in the country, that's 3 of their losses, Texas, Oregon, Indiana. And then I am not assuming anything in the Ohio State Michigan series. So please don't take it as that. But for Michigan to miss a bowl, right? They would have to not win either of these last 2 games. So in that situation, they would be 5-7, and 4 of the 7 losses would be to like playoff teams probably, right? So we would understand that. But also, no matter what the reason is, like that would be a terrible season for Michigan. So I think like a game like this, Michigan like has to win this game, because this game gets you to a bowl and is like, we just got away from us, whatever, versus like, oh my God, they fell off a cliff. Like, I actually think this is a moderately gigantic game for Michigan.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't really envision Michigan having a ton of issues here. I guess like, I don't know. There have been times where Jack Lausch and these receivers from Northwestern have looked mildly impressive. So if they come to the big house and like play their best game against a Michigan secondary that at times has looked pretty vulnerable, especially when it plays without Will Johnson, then like maybe that's the recipe for something interesting to happen here. It's a 10.5 point line. It's not like Michigan's favored by 4 touchdowns here, like it normally would be in a game against Northwestern. So Michigan has a hard time scoring. I think it'll have a hard time scoring against Northwestern because that's just the nature of the beast for the Wolverines. I don't think Northwestern's going to be able to handle this defensive front from Michigan. And I think it's probably as simple as that. So I have Michigan winning 20-13. But yeah, I understand programs, and Michigan is probably one of them, who don't think all that much of merely getting to a bowl game. But I think Sharon Moore probably really needs it in his first year to not have a losing season in his first year as head coach.
Yeah. Will Johnson is a we'll see, according to Sharon Moore, the great corner who's missed the last month or so. Maybe a little bit of a reexamination of whether Michigan should have stuck with Davis Warren. He threw 6 picks in his first 3 starts, but since he became the starter again, the last 3 games, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 42 of 74 for 425 yards. Like, it's not good, but at least he's not turning it over. Like, I absolutely understood why they went away from him, but like, it turns out there were no answers to be found anywhere else, and he's been better. So my 18-10 Michigan is 6 field goals for Michigan, because I think like that's where we could be with this too. But it just like really matters. And again, it's a crowded window there at 3:30. So maybe this isn't your first priority, but it might be worth peeking in. So like, don't, like Michigan really needs this. And then we'll be on to the Ohio State-Michigan game. All right, Illinois-Rutgers. This is a noon kick. Illinois at Rutgers is a 1.5 point favorite. It's basically a coin toss here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an awesome game. Do you want to hear the ultimate football guy quote ever from Greg Schiano?
Oh, my God.
Who might be the ultimate football guy. So it's senior day for Rutgers at whatever they play, SHI Stadium, whatever it's called now. And normally, like every other program, they would do a senior day festivities before the game where the guys walk out individually, say hi to their families, kiss your mom on the cheek, then you go play the game. Rutgers ain't doing that. Rutgers, which does its Scarlet Walk before the game, which is where the guys get off the buses and then walk into the stadium through crowds. They're going to do senior day there. 2 hours before kickoff. They're going to have the guys walk through the crowd, stop at the end, pose with their families, take a photo, and then go get ready for the game, and then not see their families again until after that game is over. Greg Schiano said, right before kickoff, you're kissing your mom and handing out flowers, and then we want you to go blast somebody on kickoff in about 7 minutes. That never really made sense to me. So he's not doing it. He is reimagining senior day for the Scarlet Knights.
I have never considered that, but it sounds right to me now.
It's a pretty convincing argument, I think, right? I think he's probably overthinking it just a tad, but it's also totally unsurprising that Greg Schiano is the guy who's doing this.
You're supposed to kiss your mom and then go blast somebody. I really love you guys. Thanks for all the support. I have to go sack Luke Altmaier. I mean, it's just what everybody else does. If Rutgers wins by 40, senior day is dead.
That's right. But I think they're going to be locked in because of this.
That's what I mean. Like, if it works,
have Rutgers winning. That's why I picked Rutgers to win.
Ryan Day and Dan Lanning and Steve Sarkisian are going to be like, you see what Schiano did?
Yeah.
The heck with how Greg Schiano killed senior day. That's a narrative podcast for us.
I listen to that.
Kiss your mom and go blast somebody. Wow. This is a great game. I have Illinois 24-20. I think it is a coin flip game. Illinois is in the top 25.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you've said last week you don't think Bert's going to let the season unravel, right? You think they're going to win out after winning last week.
Yeah. So like but Greg Schiano didn't let the season unravel either.
Right.
So again, like there's some good coaching going on in teams like this, not at the playoff tier, but like the next tier. There's some good coaching here, and like this game really matters to both these teams.
I think so. Rutgers has a chance to finish, I think, with its best Big Ten record since it joined the conference in 2014. If it can win its remaining 2 games, which I think are possible. Ethan Kaliakmanis has played pretty well, I think, the last few games. The second half against Minnesota, he did not play well, but at the last week against Maryland, the first half against Minnesota, he's played well. They have Demir Miller, who's like kind of emerging as a reliable playmaker for them, a receiver. Rutgers does. Like I just think Rutgers has kind of gotten straightened out. It's gotten past some of the defensive injuries and figured out a way to move forward. And the offense, I think, is playing a little better. And Kyle Mulungai is healthier than he was probably a week or 2 ago. So I don't know. I think it's 2 teams well positioned to finish the season strong. And like I'll pick the home team on senior day by 4 points.
Yeah, I want to watch it. Another great game. All right, next up is Purdue at Michigan State. And let me ask you a question. Has Michigan State had a sneaky bad season? They started 3-0, They've lost 5 of their last 6, and their only win is off the bye at home against Iowa. That I was like, Iowa's going to go kill them, and then they didn't. I was like, oh, Michigan State, how about that? And then I was like, no. They've lost 24-17 to Michigan, 47-10 to Indiana, and 38-16 to Illinois. Since then, they've allowed 32 sacks. That ranks them 119th in the nation. That's not good. They've thrown 11 interceptions. That's 103rd in the nation. That's not good. Overall, in the Brian Fremeau Index, they're 79th overall. They're 92nd on offense and 68th on defense. They lost, I felt like at least we talked about them when they beat Iowa. Like, how about that? Off the bye. Look what Michigan State did. And it's like, that's their only win since September. And I get it, but also I feel like they've been able to sort of hide behind like Michigan having a bad year and them being like better than Purdue, who they're playing this week. But like, this is not great, right? Like, we're okay. We get it, but like, it's not a good year.
I think you're right. They've been pretty banged up. Michigan State has. They've had to deal with a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, some offensive line stuff. I think the biggest thing for me is that like Aiden Childs has not appeared to get any better throughout the year. Like that is the maybe the most damning thing in all of this. But even with like, we love Indiana. Maybe Michigan State should still be more competitive than 47-10, which was, by the way, 10-0 and then giving up 47 straight points, right? Like, you need to be better than that in that game. I think you need to be more competitive than Michigan State was against Illinois, certainly against Michigan. Nothing wrong with losing to Ohio State and Oregon, but even like the BC game, they probably should have won that game too, right? So I think they have what they're at 4 wins now. Beat Purdue and then take your swing against Rutgers, you can get to a bowl game. Like, I don't know that getting into a bowl with Jonathan Smith in his first year can be characterized as a bad season in the end, but as things stand right now, I think it could certainly be a little better.
Purdue is not good. 52-6 at Wisconsin, they lost. 45-0 at Ohio State, they lost. They have not been good up the road. They do have that weird overtime game on the road at Illinois. They're finishing the season with 2 road games here. Max Clare, their tight end, has been really good. He has 566 receiving yards. It's like double anybody else on the team. So like, tip of the cap to Max Clare. They changed kickers last week. They've had kicker problems. Jonathan Kim from Michigan State has been great. Of all the edges Michigan State has in this game, like the kicker edge might be the greatest here. So this is a spot for Michigan State to get a win. But like, I just was sort of going through it. I was like, oh, like actually Michigan State is worse than I thought. So I have Michigan State 27-9.
Yeah, I have 30-14 because Purdue is very bad.
Yeah. All right. Next is Iowa State at Utah. This is a primetime game. So you can catch this one. Oh, by the way, Purdue at Michigan State is your Friday night game this week. So if you want to catch that was not super encouraging that you should watch that Friday night game. There have been some fun Friday night games. I'm not sure this is going to be one. 8 p.m. Michigan State's favored by 13.5. Friday,
it could be fun if
PM.
the QBs get a little loose. It could be fun.
Okay. I mean, Aiden Childs is often interesting. So I still think he's going to be good, but I think you made a good point about like how much has he really improved. So anyway, Friday night game. Iowa State at Utah is primetime on Saturday. At Utah, Iowa State is favored by 7.5.
I think this is a potentially tricky spot for Iowa State, right? This is a game we circled at the beginning of the year, right? We were like looking at Iowa State's schedule. It's like, get through your first 10, then bang, bang, here we go. It's at Utah and Kansas State, right? To get into the Big 12 championship. And obviously Utah season has fallen off a cliff and they can't keep a quarterback healthy and their offense is terrible. The defense remains very good. And Matt Campbell said this is by far the best defense Iowa State will play this year. And Iowa State, we've seen very good Iowa State. We've seen pretty bad Iowa State. And this is on the road at night. And what I think is the toughest place to play in the Big 12 when it's really rocking. I guess I don't know what kind of environment it's going to be when the season is basically over for Utah, unless like Utah fans somewhere in the back of their mind are thinking like this could be it for Kyle Whittingham. Let's show up and give him a good show before he's out of here. So like I think they should still have a good crowd there, even though this game has no stakes when we thought it might coming into the year. So I think Iowa State could find some trouble. So I don't have them running away with it. They are a touchdown and a half favorite, 7.5 points on the road last I saw. So
yes,
that is very much a reflection, I think, of just Utah's inability to score. And that will probably persist here, even though Iowa State's defense has had some struggles. But I don't know. I think that Utah could maybe potentially bottle up this Iowa State offense. And
Really?
pretty low scoring. Yeah.
See, because the thing to me is I thought Utah fought last week against Colorado more than I expected, and I was kind of impressed with how much they fought, and they lost by 25.
Yeah.
So Iowa State's not as explosive as Colorado, but Iowa State can be pretty explosive. Like Colorado came out and scored in that game, and Utah made it 28-16 late in the third. That was sort of them like hanging around. But all the things that we've said, like, it's just gotten away from Utah. And I thought that was like, not that was a last gasp, but the idea of they competed pretty hard. Their defense is good. They gave up 48 to Colorado. And I think maybe Iowa State got it back last week after 2 straight losses. Nice win at home. They are still in it. They need help, but they're not out of it in the Big 12 race. Like, go do this and then go home and host Farmageddon next week. Like, this is a big spot. If you're a good program, Iowa State goes and wins this. Yeah. And if you're like a really good program, like you go put it on somebody, because it's not over, and you're not going to let 2 straight losses ruin your season, and you're going to try to win 10 regular season games and stay in the playoff mix. Like, go be a top 25 program. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. But the note about how good Utah's defense is valuable. But I have 31-17 Iowa State.
Yeah, I have 24-13, which would be a cover, but I'm envisioning like a 1-possession game pretty late into the second half.
Okay. All right. So that again is 7:30 on Saturday night. The last game is also at night on Saturday, at least the last game for this before the break, is Cincinnati at Kansas State. This is an 8 p.m. start. Kansas State is favored by 8.5. They got booed last week. Little tough run here for Kansas State fans. The basketball team lost last Thursday at home to LSU. Then the football team lost at home and got down 3 scores against Arizona State right away, and they were losing. So now it's senior day for Kansas State. Chris Kleiman said they had a long staff meeting after the loss last week. Like, there was a lot of stuff, like, just again, like some maybe off-field stuff with family stuff that was weighing on Chris Kleiman. He seemed, just watching his news conference this week, like a little more unburdened and upbeat. He said, like, there was no one to blame last week. Like, everybody was to blame. He said there wasn't pointing fingers because, like, nobody played well. But this is another one of those where I'm maybe going to explain away the loss last week and feel good about where Kansas State is right now. I think this is a potentially huge bounce back spot for him. By the way, there was enough stuff with Chris Kleiman that the first question at his news conference this week was, are you going to retire? But there's a rumor that you're going to retire. And he said, I don't know where you got that from. I haven't said that to anybody. So that's where we were. Loss by loss the last 3 weeks for Kansas State. Like, they haven't won in a month. Like, so this is it. But so last week we talked about first pass from Avery Johnson was a pick. They had trouble. They've been having trouble with their long snapping. They missed 2 field goals last week, including one that would have given them a chance to like stay alive in the game. Part of it was because the snaps weren't good. Dylan Edwards got hurt in the second quarter last week and only played 7 snaps. Their number 2 running back, who's like a real sort of like turbo boost for them. Sounds like he'll be back this week, but Chris Kleiman was talking about how they like 10 special plays planned for him that they just kept in the holster once he got hurt. And he actually said, man, we probably should have run those plays for somebody else. But Dylan Edwards as their, sort of second alternative, the DJ Giddens, is so important to them. I think it threw them off to not have him. They couldn't get off the field on third down. They got stopped at midfield on a 4th and 1 DJ Giddens run. They had a weird fumble, and then they got stopped in the red zone on 4th down. Like, they were down 21-0 early, and it was 2 4th down stops and 2 turnovers. So like they were moving the ball. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh, we can't do anything and it's punt. But they couldn't stop Arizona State, who does have some offensive weapons. And they had a 63-yard touchdown called back by a lineman being ineligible downfield. Like, everything went wrong for them in that game. And they still fought back from a 4-score hole and were kind of like trying to hang around late. I think they bounced back. And so I don't want to give short shrift to Cincinnati. They've lost 3 in a row. and they need one more win for bowl eligibility. They can get that at home against TCU this next week. But I think this game is almost entirely about Kansas State, and I think Kansas State bounces back because I think last week was they've had 2 games like this year with BYU and Arizona State. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, but I don't think it means they're a terrible football team.
I don't think they're a terrible football team. I think they got to get Avery Johnson playing better. He's thrown 4 picks the last 2 games. Brendan Sorsby's also coming off his worst game of the year, the Cincinnati quarterback. So I probably like Avery Johnson there to bounce back more than I do Brendan Sorsby trying to do it on the road. Cincinnati's 1-3 on the road in the Big 12 this year. Has lost a couple of close ones, including at Texas Tech. So, I think Cincinnati's a solid team too, but I kind of think Kansas State rallies as well, whether that's just like rallying and becoming a better team or becoming the team that they actually are, not the one they put on the field last week, or like rallying around Chris Kleiman in some way. Maybe it's some combination of both, but I think we see a good Kansas State performance here. I have 34-24.
That is my expectation. I have 38-30 Kansas State. All right. Last couple games, our Dragon Statue picks. We'll do all of that after this break on KOTN. Doug and Bill back on KOTN. A couple more games, Landis. We'll go through these quickly. North Carolina at Boston College, noon. BC is getting 3 points at home.
They are getting 3 points at home. They're 5-5. They have UNC and Pitt left. I think BC can win both those games. Maybe you want to win this one here and get to a bowl game at home. Mac Brown, the UNC head coach, I guess it's been reported this week that the 73-year-old head coach of the Tar Heels intends on being back next year. They're riding a 3-game winning streak. UNC is. They're playing pretty good football. They get after the quarterback, the number 5 in the country in sacks with 34. I think this is, a decent matchup for BC. I feel differently about like the Bill O'Brien, Castellanos, Grayson James thing than I think you do. But
you think it was mishandled?
I think it was mishandled, but I thought that there was also some promising stuff against SMU. So I think BC builds on that. Bill O'Brien was talking about Reed Harris, their tight end, who had done nothing all year. I think he had 5 catches all season. Then he had 4 for 78 against SMU. And they're looking for someone to step up at receiver or as a pass catcher with Jaden Skeet out, and he will continue to be out this week. So I don't know. I guess I'm willing to entertain the idea that BC builds on the thing with Grayson James and gets a win here. So I have 27-20 Boston College.
Yeah, they did what I thought they would do last week, which is go down and compete. But I thought that showed something to go down and compete and really give SMU a game.
I thought they were going to get steamrolled. So, yeah.
Yeah. They're not dead. They're not dead. And this is a big one, trying to get to the bowl and everything like that. All that's really important. So, yeah, I like this here. Okay. So I'm picking Boston College 31-28 in my pick. Kyle McCord, he's chucking it all over people. This is Syracuse, UConn at Syracuse. Syracuse finishing with 2 at home, this one, and then Miami next week. He's thrown for 3,476 yards this year through 10 games. Kyle McCord has. Ryan Nassib is the single season record for Syracuse with 3,749. So if he drops another 300 this week against UConn, he'll have that record. He's already has the most he has every other record already. He's thrown for 300 yards in 9 out of 10 games. So I think he'll do it again this week. He's going to become, I think, this week Syracuse's single season all-time passing leader, which is great. UConn's okay against the pass. They're 46th in the nation in pass defense, giving up 200 a game. So UConn's actually been pretty good. They got blown out by Maryland in week 1, 50-7, and maybe you thought they were going to stink. They've won 6 of their last 7, and they beat Georgia. UConn beat Georgia this year. Wait.
No,
That's not right.
What
Actually happened was that UConn beat Georgia State beat Vanderbilt beat Alabama, and Alabama beat Georgia. So it's almost like UConn beat Georgia. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have 41-23 Syracuse.
I'm trying to think. UConn has beaten 3 teams that fired its coach this year.
That's the line in the sand. If you lose to UConn, you're out.
Yeah.
Florida Atlantic in there, right? Tom Herman.
All Owls. Florida Atlantic, Temple, and Rice.
Oh, they're the Owl Killers. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Last I checked, Syracuse is not called the Owls. So I think Syracuse. They also beat UAB, who will probably fire Trent Dilfer too. So they're getting some scalps, man. UConn's running through the sport and getting coaches canned. But not Fran Brown. Fran's getting a shower after this game. I have 35-20 Syracuse.
And like a good win last week. At Cal. Like, be ready. It turns out that maybe it's not, but Syracuse, Miami next week, we're going to talk about it a lot. I think is going to be a game. And like Cam Ward and Kyle McCord are 2 of the top 3 in the nation in passing yards per game. It is going to be a banger. So,
did any part of you consider a look ahead? Did you consider a look ahead that would make this closer than it needs to be?
Not with Fran. And McCord's trying to break the record. Like, not with Fran. They got it. They got it covered. All right. Louisville at Pitt. What you got? This is this is Louisville at Pitt is a 4:00 start, and Pitt is an 8-point dog.
It's Pitt at
Louisville. I wrote it down wrong. I fixed it, and then I still said it wrong. Pitt at Louisville on the road. Pitt's getting 8.
Pitt is trying to snap a 3-game skid against a very odd Louisville team that beat Clemson and then turned around and lost to Stanford. So I don't know what Louisville's deal is. Like, there is a ceiling with that team that I think makes them pretty potent on both sides of the ball, and they're at home. So I think they stand a reasonable chance of getting the good Louisville here. Eli Holstein, as I was checking this morning, still uncertain. Did you see anything differently on that? Seems like
not sure.
I think questionable, which is if he's questionable at this point, probably not going to play. So I'm assuming we'll see Nate Yarnell at quarterback for Pitt here. Pat Narduzzi said he thought Nate Yarnell played his tail off against Clemson. He threw it 54 times for 350 yards in that game. I actually do think he played pretty well, and Pitt's offense in general was okay against a pretty good Clemson defense and just maybe didn't finish enough opportunities. And then obviously the defense had the blunder at the end that allowed Cade Klubnik to run for 50 yards on a QB draw to go win the game. That's a pretty disheartening way to lose a game. I am wondering if that might linger a little bit for Pitt. Pitt's got some offensive line issues that it's trying to work through beyond just Branson Taylor, the left tackle, being out for the year. So I think Pitt is a little too dejected and perhaps a little too beat up to go win this game. So I have Louisville winning 31-21.
I have Pitt winning 26-24 because Louisville is nuts. Producer Mike says Holstein is cleared to play, but Narduzzi did not name a starter. So if Nate Yarnell, the coach saying Nate Yarnell played his butt off might be code for Nate Yarnell is going to start even if Eli Holstein is healthy because he's been turning the ball over in the second half.
Yeah, I also wonder, but Narduzzi saying he hasn't been cleared. I guess it was Monday or Tuesday. He said he wasn't cleared, which I also read is not cleared to practice yet too. So if he hasn't been practicing all week and is just now cleared, I would imagine we're not going to see him play. And honestly, to your point, I don't think I would play him.
And I'm going to go down picking Nardog. I'll go down. Right. That's fine.
Fair.
In flames. I'm going down with Nardog. Okay. So one more for Northern games. Central Florida at West Virginia. This is a 3:30 game. West Virginia at home is getting 3. 21 seniors for senior day. Garrett Green, the quarterback, Wyatt Milam, the great left tackle, Cole Taylor, the tight end, Anthony Wilson, the safety, like a bunch of good seniors here. They're 5-5. 5-5. They finish at Texas Tech. So West Virginia has to win one of these two to get bowl eligible. I have two tweets that I want to read. This is just West Virginia fans that I came across. I've missed one West Virginia football home game in 20 years, and that's because my grandpa died the day before. Season ticket holder, and I'm not going this week. It's sickening what the administration at West Virginia has allowed this football program to become. I'm tired of the excuses. Fire him. And then someone else quote tweeted that and said, literally no one from our group is going this weekend. You're talking 15 empty seats. We're just tired and worn out. We're done for the year. So frustrated fans, understandably frustrated. I actually wonder if Neil Brown is coaching for his job, because if they don't get to a bowl and this is their last home game and the place feels dead, that's the kind of thing that an AD, a university president, boosters, donors can look around in a stadium. I was at the West Virginia opener. There was so much anticipation for this season. That tailgate scene is awesome. It is a great place to go watch college football. And if the last home game of the season feels dead and they lose, that could be it, because those feelings matter. And it's also beyond feelings when you have people leaving seats empty and not being there, buying beer and buying food and paying for parking and buying soda and everything else. So I think this is kind of important for West Virginia. I'll take them 33-28, but I'm certainly not betting on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's important. I don't have much belief in West Virginia to go win a football game right now. And UCF is pretty bad. Like I thought UCF would be a contender in the Big 12. They have not been. They've been awful this year. I think they've lost like 6 of 7 or something like that, or 5 of 6. So West Virginia should win this game, even though they are a home underdog. I don't know. I kind of feel like it's run its course here. There's no juice. There's no momentum. So I'll pick the result that gets it done, and I'll pick Central Florida 35-31.
Okay. Our Ohio State Indiana picks, we made them on Wednesday on that gigantic show. This is a top 5 matchup. It is the first top 5 regular season matchup in Indiana history. It is the third top 5 regular season matchup for Ohio State this year. I picked Ohio State 31-21.
I picked 28-17. Ohio State.
So go listen to that if you want to dive into that. We wanted to give that game basically its own show. Our G5 game of the week, we try to pick a G5 game. This is Washington State at Oregon State, and it's weird. Like when you do PFF searches, they lump the Pac-12 in with the power conferences. Still,
they do.
It's a two-team conference. These are the 2 teams. So I guess this is for the Pac-12 championship.
I guess. Did they get this? Is there a trophy?
I don't know. I did not look into that because I was just fascinated by the Jake Dickert quote that I think everybody was fascinated by this week. Washington and Oregon State are trying to save the Pac-12. They're adding all these teams in the future, but one of the things they're going to do next year is play each other twice in the regular season because they're having such trouble making schedules. But Jake Dickert, the Washington State head coach, said this week. And he wasn't even, I thought maybe he was asked a question in a way that led him into this. He was not. He had this ready to go. This is the Washington State head coach. First thing, I've never gotten into like, they're our buddy. Oregon State's not our buddy. They would have left us as fast as we would have left them. This is what it is. It's one of our biggest rivals now. That's the way I looked at it. That's not bulletin board material. I hope they would say it the same way. Let's go compete. We've been waiting to compete with these guys. They've dealt with a lot of adversity. We've dealt with a lot of adversity. I think it's going to be an energized stadium. There's going to be a lot of cougs there. To know that this is going to be an opponent that we're going to play for a long time. Let's go do it. But if we get a better offer by better conference, we're gone, and so are they. So, like, that's where we are. Washington State has won 9 of the last 10 in this series, including 38-35 last year. And Washington State was lurking in the G5 playoff race until they lost to New Mexico State last week. And now they are lurking no more. So they should be mad. They gave up an 11-play, 75-yard touchdown drive in the final 3 minutes and the go-ahead touchdown with 30 seconds left. So, like, Washington State blew it. They blew their lurking spot, and Oregon State's had a rough year. They're 4-6. So I'll take Wazoo 37-23.
Yeah, Wazoo got the field stormed on them last week by New Mexico.
Yikes.
Yeah. Bronco Mendenhall was like crying. I got Washington State too. These are 2 defenses that give up a lot of points, so this actually could be a pretty entertaining game. Oregon State loves to run the ball. Washington State's got a crazy quarterback. So it could be high on the entertainment value, but I got Wazoo 30-20.
Yeah, John Mateer is a bonkers guy to watch, so that could be fun. And this is a 7 p.m. on a Saturday if you want to tune in. Cram it game. Ole Miss at Florida, noon. Busy window. Ole Miss, thick of the playoff race, favored by 10. And I was trying to look this up during the show because I've been looking at it all week, and I want to make sure I had it right. Power conference quarterbacks, deep passes, 20 yards or more, the highest passer rating in the country, Florida freshman DJ Lagway.
Yeah.
So he might chuck it all over Ole Miss and Jackson Dart this week.
He might. He could also get sacked 12 times because Ole Miss's defensive front is very good. I just think Ole Miss kind of emptied the bag a little bit on Georgia, and even though it has had a week since that game happened, I don't think you're going to get a good Ole Miss here. I think Lane Kiffin has been building toward beating Georgia for 2 years, and they did it, and now they're going to come out flat in the swamp against Florida. I think this is a very similar line to last week's game between LSU and Florida. No, was that 4? Was that 4? It might have been 4. I might be wrong on that.
I think that was 4. Yeah,
I think that was 4 points. So I take that back. But Florida coming off of a win against LSU. LSU beat Ole Miss. I'll transitive property that. I don't care. You're not supposed to. It's pretty dumb, but I'll do it. I think Florida with DJ Lagway is dangerous. I'm picking the Gators, 24-21.
Yeah. They were trying to fire Billy Napier, and then DJ Lagway was too good, so he saved him. I'll take Florida 31-27, and this just throws a wrench. It actually it does. It actually would clarify the SEC playoff picture a little bit to hand Ole Miss a third loss, because then it's like, okay, we get it. You beat Georgia, but you've lost to Kentucky, LSU, and Florida. You're not making the playoff. So this actually, I'm not so sure there's anybody rooting against this, right? Maybe Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, because he wants 14 SEC teams in the 12-team playoff. But other than that, just dispatch these guys. So we'll take the Gators. All right. Dragon statue. Who won? Ooh.
You won.
Who won last week?
I still have the dragon statue here.
Yeah.
But I don't want to display it because I didn't earn it. I didn't earn it.
Oh.
Week. You won. You snapped the losing streak.
Yeah. Rocco Becht helped me snap it, right? Rocco Becht
came and it was actually more. It was more Ty Felton. So I had Drew Aller and Denzel Boston. Okay. And you had Rocco Becht and Ty Felton, and Becht and Aller had pretty similar outputs fantasy points wise last week, but Denzel Boston only had 2 catches, and Ty Felton had 6 catches and a touchdown. So he was the one. Ty Felton got me a win, got me my first win of the fantasy season, and now he has gotten you this win to snap your losing streak.
Yeah. So that makes it 6-6 on the year. Every week we take one Northern quarterback and one Northern skill player. You can't reuse them, and we're 6-6 on the year, and I am running out of quarterbacks, man. It got a little dicey for me this week. So I wound up going with Max Brosmer. That's part of why I was talking up Minnesota, because it's like, okay, I kind of need Max Brosmer to throw the ball efficiently against Penn State. And I'm taking Colston Loveland from Michigan, the tight end who has 560 receiving yards this year, 4 touchdowns. I haven't taken a Michigan guy or Minnesota guy yet this year, so I'm happy to get the Gophers and the Wolverines into my Dragon statue mix.
Those are good picks, actually. This could be pretty. I like the Loveland pick more than I like the Brosmer pick, but they're not bad. That's not a bad reach if you're running out of QBs to grab Max Brosmer, who's been pretty hot lately. Yeah, I'm also going with the quarterback who's been pretty hot lately. I'm going with Jalen Daniels.
Oh yeah, you are
against Colorado. He's thrown it really well for the last last 4 games for Kansas. He has run it well. He didn't run it well last week, but he had run it well in the 3 games prior to that and scored in all 3 of those games on the ground. I think he's going to run a decent amount against Colorado this week, and I think he'll find some passing production too. So I like a big game out of Jalen Daniels, and then I'm going with the freshman receiver Nick Marsh at Michigan State against Purdue. Very possible that Aiden Childs will throw 4 interceptions in that game, but I'm hoping he might throw 2 touchdowns to Nick Marsh as well, who's been quietly one of the more productive freshmen in all of college football this year. We just don't talk about him because Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams exist, and also Michigan State is not very good.
Yeah. Good picks, kind of off the radar picks a little bit, but I like them. Yeah. Good picks by you. Okay. That'll do it. Friday morning betting show with me and T. Shoe. Saturday night, 11 p.m. live on YouTube. Post-game show. We'll be wrapping up all the best Northern games. If there's some crammage that we need to be cramming on people, we'll be cramming that cram stuff. And then just as a heads up for next week, we will not have a full show on Thanksgiving. So the plan next week is we'll have live shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as usual, live at noon on YouTube. And then we'll drop the betting show Thursday morning. And so we'll just be a show short next week because we want to eat turkey too. right?
Yeah.
So
I love the idea of sitting around the Thanksgiving table listening to UNT shoe give out plays.
Yeah. No. We want to. I mean, we're doing okay. We're still up. So yeah. So that's our plan for next week. But we're so grateful. What are we thankful for? These folks, Bill, aren't we?
Yeah. These folks in Northern Ball.
And Northern Ball. Thankful for our producer, Mike Krostowski, who always makes us look good and sound good. We'll see you guys in the betting show. We'll see you Saturday night. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.